Hi guys. Hi guys. Sorry about that. Hopefully you've all worked out that I actually started that on the wrong account, as you probably gathered. Yeah, perfect. Okay, that was a good start. As you can see, without Millington Drake, I'm obviously useless on my own. Welcome aboard, everybody. So tonight was really to try and answer some of the instructional questions that I've been getting a lot of. There's been, as you know, me and Tarquin have been doing all sorts of stuff together, but what we're trying to do, or I'm trying to do, is actually answer some of the more specific instructional questions that have been asked. And one of the reoccurring themes seems to be largely around kind of gun fitting and uses of pattern plates and all these sorts of different stuff that keeps coming up time and time and time again. So I thought I'd run through the gun fit, and then by all means, guys, join in with questions and bits and bobs of anything you want to ask. So I think the first thing that I need to say is that for me, I think that we need to establish exactly what a gun fit is. There are lots of people who do so-called gun fitting, which I call a gun check. So let me explain what a gun check is, first of all. A gun check is when you've been shooting for a reasonable length of time, you own a gun and you turn up for a lesson, okay, and, the other guy, the instructor, looks down the gun at you and basically says, okay, does it fit, does it not fit, okay? And what he's looking to see whether the gun fits you in a reasonable fashion. And certain instructors, myself included, will use a gun fit to make small alterations to the gun in order to try and get you shooting better, okay? So to me, that's not a gun fit, that's a gun check. Lots of instructors carry out gun checks every single day of the year, so to speak, on normal lesson stuff. So a gun fit, okay, and I think it's important here to cover the whole gun fit theory. I believe that you need 3 gun fits in your life, okay, or possibly more, to make the whole system work. And let me explain that. So gun fit number 1 is to kind of get you going, okay? So if you're relatively new to shooting, you turn up, okay, and no matter what size you are, what we need to try and do, we need to try and get a gun that looks like it fits you reasonably. And that can be with a Beretta or fairly standard gun. And we might make alterations to try and make sure that gun fits you as best we possibly can. So that's your first gun fit, okay? And many people can shoot stuff just straight off the peg, okay? An average person will shoot an average Beretta or Browning. Personally, I usually find them a little bit low in the comb, but we'll come on to that later. And so that's what I would recommend, is that's your first gun fit. Gun fit number 2 comes really when you have been shooting long enough and you're able to mount the gun and actually with a fairly regular fashion make sure that the gun mount is the same. So what we're looking for is consistency. We're looking for that gun mount to be consistent. You can mount it. Each time I mount it, we're seeing a similar picture. Okay, so it's actually something which is much more probably 2 to 3 years into your shooting career, depending on how much you do. At that point, we can carry out a proper gun fit, okay? And that proper gun fit for me is we start right from scratch with a tri-gun, whether it be side by side or under and over, and we actually take measurements. We're also trying to understand actually what that client is going to want to use that gun for. So are you going to want to shoot a lot of high pheasants? Are you going to want to shoot grouse? Okay. Are you going to want to shoot walked up stuff? Because we will alter the measurements slightly in order to try and make sure you get the best out of that gun fit. So if you're shooting a lot of walked up stuff, you might want the gun fractionally shorter so you can mount it quicker, as an example. I find that what I'm doing, for example, when I'm fitting a lot of my grouse guns, I fit them slightly shorter than they perhaps would be normally, because if you're shooting a target that's coming below your feet, then it's easier to mount the gun. Now, obviously, the most of us, and myself included, we will end up with a situation where we're using one gun for all. So it's a bit of a, you need to try and understand what, is it 20% grouse, or is it 60% grouse, 20% pheasant, 20% partridge, or how all those figures are coming together. I think then what's interesting is we're going to run through and we're actually going to come up with precise measurements for that person, okay? And I will fit down to a millimetre. People often ask me about, how accurate does it need to be? I'm going to go for millimetres. And not only am I going to look at the stock length, shape and all that sort of stuff, I'm going to look at grip shape, I'm going to look at forends, I'm going to look at barrel balance, I'm going to look at trigger pulls, okay? All those type of things I'm actually going to look at to try and make sure that we've got a gun that fits you as best we can. Often we are still trying to alter a gun that you own, or are going to buy. So something like a Perazzi or a Beretta or all these sorts of guns, which are current mainstream guns, will end up with a situation where that is a gun that we're trying to alter to make you fit. Or if you can afford to, that's when you can get to a full-blown custom stock. Okay, let's keep going though before we come back onto custom stocks. Your third gun fit is when you're shooting as well and truly settled. Okay, so most people, that's probably, depending on how many cartridges they're shooting, somewhere between the 8 to 10 year mark, okay, of shooting. And a lot of you will be going, crikey, that's a long time. But actually, you're shooting, you will develop certain habits that I need to take into consideration when I'm carrying out that fit. And by the way, that can be interspersed with other gun fits simply because of you losing or gaining weight. So I've got one guy, for instance, who actually lost 11 stone. Can you believe? Well, obviously, that's a new gun fit. You need to treat it almost exactly like you would buying a suit. So if you are altering suit sizes considerably, then you need to think about having your gun fitted. So let's just cover what should take place under a gun fit. The first thing is, and let's go straight to the chase, should a pattern plate be used or not? Should you actually need to fire the gun? So lots of people believe that you can walk into a shop and you can do it with a laser or simply by looking down the other end of the gun and say a gun fits perfectly. To me, that's absolute rubbish. Okay, one thing I've learned in my instructional career is you've got to see somebody shoot the gun, okay, in order to understand actually what goes on. How they actually mount the gun in a shop or anywhere else often bears no relevance to how they actually shoot. And interestingly, I've just kind of fitted a friend of mine, to be honest with you. And when I first looked at the gun that we were fitting, you'd look in the shop, and anybody I sent him to would say, "Well, the gun doesn't fit him." And we spent a little bit of a time together, me watching him shoot, and actually shoots entirely differently from how he actually mounts the gun in the shop. Even though he won't have that, he's absolutely adamant that how he mounts the gun in a shop is exactly how he mounts the gun, when he's shooting. It isn't, trust me. But you'd look at him and think, the gun's nowhere near. The interesting thing, take him out, watch him shoot it. He shoots it really well. Central patterns, everything. More interesting and perhaps slightly controversial, we're just coming on to, I take him onto a pattern plate and it's absolutely smack bang where I want the gun to pattern. Now, seeing as we've kind of raised pattern plates, there's lots of people out there who are saying at the moment, we should be using pattern plates, we shouldn't be using pattern plates. For me, a pattern plate is a tool to help me see what's going on. There is a danger, however, with pattern plates. Certain people can't shoot pattern plates or really struggle to shoot pattern plates. And sometimes that can be a waste with certain individuals. So you can take an individual onto a pattern plate. I tend not to warn people about this, but the felt recoil on a pattern plate tends to be more than you're expecting. Okay, so it can sometimes throw that. But as far as I'm concerned, a pattern plate is essential to fit a gun if you want to be exact. And as I said to you, I'm wanting to fit to a millimetre, so I don't want it to be near, I want it to be absolutely bang on. Personally, I look to get my patterns to pattern probably 80% high, 20% low, sometimes 60-40. Personally, I like a gun to shoot higher than most people, simply because the majority of my clients are shooting grouse or they're shooting high pheasants. Common mistakes on all these is if the gun's set too flat, for example, a grouse coming straight at you, okay, you need to cover it to kill it. Well, of course, if you cover it with the gun, okay, to kill it, then you end up with a situation where you can't see that you've actually killed it. So we want the gun to pattern high. That means you can just tuck underneath the grouse, squeeze the trigger, watch it die, move on to the next one. Likewise, if you watch people shooting high pheasants, for example, common mistake is either the behind straight stuff or the struggle with shooting straight driven. More importantly, a right-handed shooter, one of his big misses, as he turns to shoot a left to right crosser, he'll roll his shoulder slightly and pull underneath the bird. Well, obviously a gun that shoots higher, it's much more difficult for him to miss that bird under the bird, so to speak. So it helps him keep up on the line. So that's the process that I'm wanting to do, and I'm wanting to shoot a pattern plate. Now, people out there would say, oh, well, hold up a minute, pattern plate's stationary, okay, it's not moving, it bears no relevance to, shooting a moving target. Personally, I disagree. I think that actually, what's the difference between a grouse coming absolutely arrow straight at you? Okay, you're going to mount and shoot it, very little gun movement. If the gun doesn't impact where you need it to impact, then frankly, you're going to miss. So if you stand in front of a pattern plate and miss high and left, okay, you're going to miss that same grouse high and left. So we need to try and work that out. I think one of the problems with pattern plates is there are lots of instructors out there, and no disrespect to them, who, when they see the gun missing in a particular point, they then don't know how to correct it, so they fear pattern plates. As I say, not for everybody, but for me, pattern plates are an important part of a gun fit to make sure it is absolutely accurate. What it also does, more importantly for me, is it gives the client massive confidence that the gun is shooting where they're looking. They can actually see it as well as you can. So it's not some instructor stood behind you going, oh, well, the gun's shooting a little bit high, it's shooting a little bit low, or any of those sorts of things. You can actually see exactly where the gun is shooting. Guys, so I'm trying to cover a lot of gun fit stuff. Has anybody got any questions out there? Well, I'm just seeing if there's any questions rolling in. One of the other things I got asked was, why do I fit so many palm swells? And you're absolutely right, I do fit lots of palm swells, particularly for under and overs. The reason I'm massively into fitting palm swells is that a lot of my guys are doing double gun stuff, okay, or not, as the case may be. And what I tend to find by fitting a palm swell, what that allows me to do is then we end up with a situation where I can get the hand located into the same at any point. No matter how they grab the gun, the palm swell will automatically locate that hand onto the gun, because the palm swell forces the hand into a particular position. Also, it gives you a little bit more control over the whole movement of the gun, so the right hand is able to do some work. Now, I know a lot of people will be saying, oh, we've always been told that the left hand should work, but it actually allows the right hand to work quite well as well, particularly when you're shooting grouse and shooting fast. So, a couple of questions just rolling in. Does the 80-20 apply at any range? Good question. So, I tend to do all my pattern plate work at 16 yards. And basically because what that allows me to do, then a 16th of an inch equates to an inch on the pattern plate. So when I'm fitting, it just makes it very easy. But as you can imagine, as we step further back, that effect becomes slightly higher. Okay, so, but it becomes a thing as how big the pattern grows as you move further back. But the 80-20 is where I would like to be. I've just inherited a double ELL with 28-inch barrels. I've been told these are too short for me as I'm 6 foot. Okay, to be honest, my simple question about that would be, what do you want to shoot with it? So if you want to shoot silly high pheasants, then I would suggest 28 inch is probably not the gun. If you want to shoot grouse, I have to say I'm a massive 28-inch barrel fan for shooting grouse. I think that, you know, I see lots of people shooting grouse with guns that are too long for them, and as a result, the guns aren't quick enough. When I watch all the great kind of grouse shots, the chances are they're shooting shorter barrel, fast reactive guns. Okay, and so that's what I would say. It depends what you want to shoot. It's horses for courses. I think when you're getting a gun, again, this is a really important thing to touch on. We need to understand what you're actually going to use that gun for. Is it suitable? Is it fit for purpose? You know, we touched on this with Tarquin, and one of the interesting things is that far too often I see people go into a gun shop and suddenly they walk out with something that's totally unsuitable. It doesn't bear the same relevance as to what you're actually wanting to use that gun for. So sit down yourself and make some notes. All I do with a client is I sit down with them and say, right, how's your shooting made up? What percentage of grouse? Might be no grouse, might be walked up, might be duck flighting, might be pigeon shooting, might be all these different things. But try and come up with a percentage. More importantly, try, if you can, to sit down and think, well, what's it going to be in the future as well, not just now? What do I want to aspire to? And try and make yourself a little checklist of actually what that gun needs to be. And if it's coming up with, you know, walked up shooting, duck flighting, okay, a little bit of grouse, partridges over hedges and things, okay, that makes up 80% of your shooting, and then you've got 20% kind of higher pheasant shooting. There's no reason not to shoot a 28-inch barrel gun. Okay, I'm just trying to flick through some of these questions. What is your preferred shooting method for game shooting? Do you change method for a particular game and different shots? Great question. Crikey, we could spend a long time on this. Yes, in simple terms. So, where should we start? A lot of my grouse stuff, I will use all sorts of different methods to shoot grouse, and it literally can depend on the bird, and I think that's why grouse shooting can be so difficult. I think how I regard it is I regard it like having a toolbox of shots, and you will use that toolbox depending on what kind of bird you're seeing. So a lot of my stuff, shooting out the back, for example, on a grouse moor, I just cut stuff off. Okay, I never allow the bird to pass the gun and just literally cut it off. A lot of my fast incoming shots, I'll cut them off. I won't start behind them. Okay, I'll literally just chop them off. However, a long crossing grouse in front of me, then I'll use a very different method. I'm a big believer in matching gun speed to target speed and shooting very instinctively. So to give you an example to try and explain that, then one of the things I'm going to do on a high pheasant, I'm hopefully going to set my footwork correctly, and then I'm going to match the gun speed to the target speed, bring the gun hopefully just onto the head of the pheasant, and then I'm actually going to pull off and squeeze the trigger as I go. I'm not a big tracking fan. Okay, to me, I think that removes your instinctiveness. Okay, so I hope that kind of very quickly answers your question. Simon Reinhold, do you tighten clients' choke for patterning at 16 yards? To be honest with you, I want to shoot as tight a choke as I possibly can at 16 yards. The tighter the choke I can get, the more accurate the gun fit I can get, basically. So, you know, a lot of people would look at me and go, 16 yards to do a gun fit. Just allows me to be more accurate, basically. That's what I'm looking for. And if I can get a nice tight choke, I want to be able to very clearly see where the pattern is on that pattern plate. Let me have a look here. Top 5 pheasant shoots last season. Holy smoke. Well, I've got to say this one, haven't I? Brigands. Top 5 pheasant shoots. For me would be Anik. You might say it's a partridge shoot, but I love Linnup. Drumlanrig would be up there. Where else would I want to go? Probably Chargate, Merton and Hornby. Hopefully that's kind of 5. Jonathan Wood, here we go. This has got to be commenting on over and unders and side by sides, but remember the most civilized and elegant way to shoot grouse is with a 16-bore side by side. Jonathan, absolutely. Jonathan is giggling away now. I know he is, because he shoots. He's a fan of shooting side by sides. Hey guys, I've just written an article in the Field Sports magazine about this, so I'm not going to cover it too much. But basically, as you know, I believe there's between a 10% and a 15% advantage to shooting under and overs. I think it's no coincidence that we all shoot. You know, you look at all the medals that have been won, then the majority of them have been won with under and overs. For all those different reasons, faster, better handling, single sighting playing. I think we all know that. Having said that, there is nothing better than a well shot side by side, in my opinion. Okay, so somebody who shoots a side by side really nicely, there's nothing better to watch. Okay, it's Ed Solomon's Ultramax 4s talk to me. Obviously, I wouldn't dream of using Ultramax 4s, Ed Solomon's, just because they would be Plas Wad. And of course, you don't use them either, hopefully. Okay, please could you discuss adjustable stocks? Are they good for the one gun man, woman who might not be able to afford a custom fit? Great question, really great question. Okay, so adjustable stocks. Yes, I am a fan of adjustable stocks, provided they have enough movement and are comfortable enough to shoot. And what I mean by that is that, you know, I was sent a great picture only 2 days ago of a lady client shooting I think it's a Krieghoff. And the problem is, and I'll just try and do an example of this, is the first thing where it's all gone wrong for me is she's obviously quite a slight lady and she can't reach the trigger. So she's got her hand rotated up to try and basically squeeze the trigger. So already we've got a gun, a grip that doesn't fit her. Now, if her wrist is rotated in the wrong position, she can't mount the gun properly anyway. She's going to struggle from day one. So I think it's one of those, it's a really interesting one where adjustable stocks have their place, there's no question, but you cannot beat somebody who is able to look at all the different aspects that make that gun easy to shoot or not easy to shoot. And grip shape can be one of them, length can be another. And I think you need to be careful that when you start adjusting stocks, you don't adjust it for the sake of adjusting. That's one of my fears when people start adjusting their own stocks to try and set them up. But yes, as an answer, then you know you get that situation where an adjustable stock can help. Okay, let's try and the Duke of Northumberland shot the highest pheasant I've ever seen shot, and that was with his side by side. Read the article, okay, in Field Sports, and you'll see that I might be banned from Anik and Linnup for quite a considerable length of time. The best shot size and grams for shooting high pheasants. Okay, so can I talk about touching on dodgy ground? So let's try and cover that whole barrel length, choke, shot size issue. So for me, you can shoot 28s to 32s, your own preference, whatever you want to do, really. Okay. I think what I would say to you is define high, because I'm a massive believer that you'll kill a 50-yard pheasant with a 30-gram 6. Okay. You know, when you look at all the work that's been done, it's pattern that kills. Okay, up to about 50 yards. Then as we start to get higher, of course, penetration becomes quite important, and striking energy. Then you need to think about your shot size. You know, I think we're often over cartridging massively. Nice to see Robert Everett joining us. I'm sure he'll have a comment about this, but it is pattern that kills, not shot size. Once we start to get onto what I call big stuff, okay, then I am definitely a fan of 4s. Many of you know that we spent a long time working with Hull to produce a side-by-side load, which was a 28-gram 4. I am astounded how good that shell is. It's an amazing shell. Many of you know that through the Fabries I use a 34-gram 4, okay, on the really big stuff. I'm not a fan of big cartridges, i.e. 36s and above. Simply you're losing speed, okay? So they're big, slow loads. Choking wise, rarely will you see me shoot more than a half choke. Sometimes I use 5/8. And people often say to me, well, you know, how do you come to all these conclusions? To be honest with you, just watching people kill pheasants. The more time I spend watching people kill pheasants, okay, the more information I get about what works and doesn't. I work quite closely with Teague. I think it's one of those interesting things where, you know, Teague is an expert in what he does and building patterns and what have you, and I'm a massive fan in regulating your guns to shoot a kind of a very even pattern. So that's why I work quite closely with Teague chokes, and I'll often get people to Teague their guns, or certainly send their guns to Teague, in order that we end up with a situation where you get the very best pattern. Guys, I'm just going to interrupt. I can see there's 60 odd of you watching me. Obviously, it's coming up to 8 o'clock, and I want to just pause for the clap at 8 o'clock, which I'll do. Now, I didn't think that many of you were actually going to watch me, so if you want me to carry on, then give me some thumbs up, and I'll come back on at sort of 8:05. I was thinking half an hour would be enough, but obviously by the look of it, perhaps it's not. Right, what have we got here? Robert Everett, the lighter, faster load with a 4 Imperial will have more killing energy than a 34 gram 4. Controversial. Crikey, people are currently wriggling. I can feel them at the thought of shooting a 28 gram versus a 36 gram 4. That is for certain. Okay. I'm seeing lots of thumbs up. Okay, so I'm assuming that means that I need to come back. Okay. Okay, so always shot with one eye closed and had results I'm happy with. The question is to stick with what works, or make an effort to switch to both eyes open. Okay, right, this is a really good one. I think one of the things you need to understand is, I would ask, have you done any lessons? Has anybody looked at your eye dominance? Okay. In an ideal situation, the first port of call would be a good instructor. In fact, I'm going to actually stop this because I can see what's going to happen. We're going to start getting into this, and then we're going to lose our thread, so to speak, because it's going to be 8 o'clock. Guys, what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back on live bang on the dot at 8:05. So if everybody wants to rejoin me, then let's try and do that if we can. Okay.